So we are going to look at different ways to prove triangles congruent. Okay, different ways to prove triangles are congruent. So, definition of two congruent triangles. It states two triangles are congruent if corresponding sides are congruent. And corresponding angles are congruent. Okay, so your sides have to be congruent between your two triangles, and your angles have to be congruent between your two triangles. Okay, our symbol here. Okay, the symbol, what does it mean?
Congruent.
Okay, it means something is congruent. So they're the same. They're equal. They are congruent. So below here I have the different ways to prove that two triangles are congruent. Okay, so for any triangle, we can use SSS, which is side, side, side. Okay, so this is side, side, side. So if I have two triangles, I can prove that those two triangles are congruent if their corresponding sides are congruent. So if I have this side congruent, this side here congruent, and that third side congruent. Okay, so all three of those sides have a corresponding side that is congruent. Okay, so that's where they're getting side, side, side. Okay, the next one is side, angle, side. Okay, it is side, angle, side. So again, we have two triangles. We have one pair of corresponding sides congruent. We have one pair of angles congruent. And then another side congruent. Now with side, angle, side, that angle has to be between your two sides. Okay, so we call that the included angle. Okay, so it must have this included angle. Now that means that the angle is between these two sides. Okay, so it's in between those two. So if you had a side that was congruent over here, it wouldn't be side, angle, side. That angle has to be between those two congruent sides. Okay, it must be between. Okay, the next one is angle, side, angle. So angle, side, angle. Again, we have two triangles. We have one pair of angles congruent. One pair of sides congruent. And a second pair of angles congruent. Now, just like with side, angle, side, with angle, side, angle, that side has to be between your two angles. Okay, that's why it's in the middle. Okay, so it has to have that included side. Okay, that side has to be between your two angles. Okay, the last one for any triangle is angle, angle, side. Okay, so again, you have two angles and a side, but in this one, your side is not in the middle. Okay, so here I had two angles and a side. here I have 2 angles and a side. But with this one, your side is not between those 2 angles. Okay, so here are my triangles. I have this pair of angles congruent. I'll say this pair of angles congruent. Now for this one, my sides congruent can't be between the 2. Okay, it has to be on the outside of those 2 angles. So I'll use that bottom line for my side congruent. Okay, do you see the difference between these 2? Yeah? Okay. So those ones are for any triangle. Okay, and they specifically have to be written this way. Okay, your angle is between your 2 sides, your side is between your 2 angles, or your side is on the outside of those 2 angles. Okay, with side, 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 that's just how you write it. Make sense? Alright, last one over here is for right triangles only. Okay, this is for right triangles only. It's called hypotenuse leg. Okay, it is hypotenuse leg. So since this is for right triangles only, I need to draw in right triangles this time. Here's a right triangle. Here's a right triangle. Okay, so I know that angle is going to be 90 degrees. Now for hypotenuse leg, your hypotenuse have to be congruent. Okay, hypotenuse must be congruent. And then just one of your legs. Okay, so I'll pick this one. Okay, so one of your legs and the hypotenuse have to be congruent. Okay, questions on these different ways to prove triangles congruent? Kind of makes sense using those abbreviations? Alright, then we're going to look down at the bottom here. So we want to mark each pair of triangles to illustrate the way used to prove the triangles are congruent. So they're giving you how to prove these are congruent triangles. You have to mark them like I marked them up here. So for number 1, if we want to use side angle side, shh, quiet please. We want to use side angle side to prove these 2 triangles are congruent. I know I have to have this included angle between 2 sides. Okay, so if I choose this side and this side to be congruent, okay, let's say I choose this top angle here on both to be congruent. Which side has to be congruent in both then? This one. Okay, so this side here, those 2 sides there must be congruent because that angle has to be between your 2 congruent sides. Does that make sense of how you're doing these problems? Okay, I want you guys to do 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so label those. Now some of you might have different answers than the person sitting next to you. If you're confused, okay, raise your hand. I can come around and help you. Yes? Okay, so 2, 3, 4, and 5. Label those.
So Eric, how do you come together?
I don't really care. Oh, you have to put it in between.
You have to take a sip. Big gulp. It looked like. He is. If they don't. That's why you do. There we go.
Where's your pass? Well, make sure you check out those.
I'm slow on giving up on school.
That's not good. Don't do that. You can do it. You're almost done. We're gonna go over these problems. So number 2, you have angle, side, angle, meaning your side needs to be included between your 2 angles. So again, yours might look different than mine. So if I have one pair of angles here, I have my sides congruent here. Okay, then my last angle would have to go on this side right here. Okay, so that side should be in between your 2 angles. Again, mine is probably different than yours. Number 3, you have angle, angle, side. So again, 2 angles and 1 side. However, the side has to be on the outside of those congruent angles. So here if I have these 2 pairs of angles congruent, I'll label this pair of angles congruent. Okay, then my side can't be between those 2, so it can't be this side. It can be, I'll label this side. Okay, so my side is not between those 2 angles. Number 4, we have hypotenuse legs, so this must be a right triangle. Okay, your hypotenuse for sure has to be congruent, so you should have a dashed line through at least the hypotenuse here. And then your leg, okay, I can either mark these 2 as congruent or I can mark these 2 as congruent. It does not matter. I will use the bottom ones here. Okay, the last one is side, side, side. So all of your sides should be marked. Okay, so here's one pair, second pair, and third pair. So for number 5, you shouldn't have any angles marked as congruent, just all of your sides. Okay, and if you have questions about how you drew in your labels and you don't know if you got it right, I can come around and check if you let me know. Okay? So I can check that to make sure you did it correctly as well. Any questions on these before we go to the back here? Thanks. All right. So on the back, we want to state the abbreviation for the theorem or postulate to prove. So to prove these triangles congruent, we're going to use what we just talked about. So side, 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 angle, side, all of those. So first, what we have to do is label our triangles with the given information. So labeling our triangles here, we have AC, this side, is equal to DF. Okay, so those two sides are equal, so I'm going to label those. Okay, we also have BC is equal to EF. And angle C is congruent to angle F. Okay, and we're trying to prove triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. Okay, so looking at my labels, I notice I have 2 pairs of sides and 1 angle congruent. So I would make sure I go in order here as I'm labeling this. So I started with a side, to an angle, to a side. So this would be side, angle, side. Okay, you have that included angle between your 2 sides. Okay, included angle between your 2 sides. Let's do another one. So number 2, again, labeling our 2 triangles here. We have ED equal to RT. Okay, so those 2 sides are congruent. We have angle D congruent to angle T. And angle E congruent to angle R. Okay, so I have 2 pairs of angles and 1 side. Now that side is between the 2 angles. So why would these 2 triangles be congruent? Angle, side, angle. Okay, so if you don't know what order to put them in, look at one of your triangles. Start on one of the ends. So if I start with an angle here, and I move to the right, I go to a side, and then to another angle. So angle, side, angle. Make sense? Yeah? All right, we'll do one more, number 3. Okay, so again, we have our given information. We want to label our triangles. So AC is equal to EF. CB is equal to DF. And angle C is congruent to angle F. Okay, why would my 2 triangles then be congruent? Which one? Which one? Say it louder. Side, angle, side. By side, angle, side. Good. Okay, question on those first 3. Okay, I want you guys to do 4 to 8.
I have a question then.
Go ahead.
What is that T? Arrow.
Oh, this means perpendicular.
Yeah, what are the 2 words?
Okay, that means perpendicular. All right, sit down. So you guys are doing 4 to 8. So label your triangles. Okay, label those triangles. And then decide why the 2 triangles would be congruent.
I guarantee there's some Ryan, you gotta talk. Come over here, Dave.
Here I have
You just come sit down.
And then you choose the word bisect. Bisect. Who's calling me?
The picture of
You're
what?
I've been asking you to give me one, like he, like 4, and then you go back. Yeah.
I
Well, and I also asked you to be you're associated with them.
I'm gonna go through number 4 really quick before you keep going. So, with number 4, you're given that BD is perpendicular to AC. So if BD is perpendicular to AC, what do you know about these two angles? It's perpendicular. They're right angles, right? Okay. I'm also given AB. AB is equal to BC. Now with this, just because you have right triangles does not mean it is hypotenuse leg. You need to check to see if your hypotenuse are congruent. Are your hypotenuse congruent in this picture? Is it labeled as congruent? No. So you cannot use hypotenuse leg. Just because it's a right triangle does not mean it is hypotenuse leg. However, if I look at triangle ABD and triangle CBD, they share this side right here. Yes, you see that? Okay, so that means that side is equal to itself. Okay, since they share that side, it's equal to itself. Okay, so if that side was 4, well, then if you have triangle ABD and you were to separate that, that same side is still going to be 4, right? If you separate the triangles, so it is equal to itself. So now I know right angles are congruent. So since my angle is between two sides, what is this? So this is one of those freebies that you need to look for. Okay, so if you have a shared side between your two triangles, it's always congruent to itself. So you have a few more here where you have a shared side between your two triangles. Mark that shared side as congruent to itself, and that should help you out. Okay, so keep going from here. I think that should help you a little bit. Keep going from here. Work through those problems.
Oh, you're right.
Horizontal leg.
I don't know. I'm not that
Hold on, what does bisect mean? Okay.
So what
So do they share that side? So that,
That's like
and then
What
these
about
two
your
are same.
angles?
These two are the same.
Why do you take all this? I think I should.
Splitting your angles.
This actually just like applied decision. And I'm not going with them. I wouldn't let him in.
I'm so confused. I think it'd be equal strength. Maybe angle side.
Oh.
Oh, that's right.
The angle one and angle two are equal.
Angle side. Oh, you're over here.
It's splitting this angle into two.
No, it's negative.
Each
So
flash.
that means it's one angle.
Stop hitting. I couldn't be done hard.
You're the one that rock hard.
Because I know because it's like this and then that is the same.
No, I'm just being honest. Let's go. Yeah. Send the ball.
This gives you, if these are perpendicular, what do you want this angle?
He wants you out.
I don't know.
I'll measure it.
Very.
It's probably
Are you out?
Perpendicular to A. So what do you want there?
90.
Yes.
This one's 90. Oh, it makes sense.
Hey, Max. Max. You miss your eye.
Jeez.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. What do you want?
He doesn't miss your eye.
Who's just as sing as that? That's not.
Yes.
Oh, we're on 6. Okay. Because it was a computer. To share your side. So you're gonna
I want to start going over this so I can give you some time here to work on your assignment. So, number 5, labeling your triangles. You have AB equal to BC. You have EB congruent to BD. And you have angle A and C are right angles. So first thing I always check when I have a right triangle, is my hypotenuse labeled as congruent? Shh, quiet guys. Is my hypotenuse labeled as congruent? Is one of my legs labeled as congruent? So this has to be hypotenuse leg. Okay, if my hypotenuse was not labeled as congruent, I'd have to see what other way I can prove those triangles congruent. Okay, then number 6, we have AB equals DC, and angle X is congruent to angle Y. With this one, you're trying to prove triangle ABD is congruent to CDB. Well, those two triangles share this side right here. And like I said before, if your triangles share a side, it is congruent to itself. Okay, from here I can use my labels. So I have an angle between my two sides. So this is side, angle, side. Okay, number 7, got a little tricky, using some vocabulary here. So angle A is congruent to angle B. Segment CD, this one right here, bisects angle ACB. So they're talking about this larger angle here. If you're bisecting something, you're splitting it into two congruent parts. So this angle here would split into two congruent parts, meaning angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Okay, so if something is bisecting something else, it splits it into two equal parts. Now for my last label, what is my last label? What's my last label in my triangles though? This side right here. Again, I have a shared side. If you have a shared side, it is congruent to itself. Okay, it's congruent to itself. Now with my labels, I have a side outside my two angles. So I would label this as angle, angle, side. Okay, it is angle, angle, side. Okay, don't label random sides or random angles if they don't give you anything for it. Okay, you can't just label a random side because you think it looks the same. Okay, that's not how these work. Okay, the last one, you're given CA. You're given CA is perpendicular to AB. If this is perpendicular, that forms a right angle. Same thing with DB, perpendicular to AB. It forms that right angle. Okay, then we also have CA is equal to DB. And AO is equal to OB. This is a right triangle. Are my hypotenuse congruent? Are they labeled as congruent? No. Can I use hypotenuse leg then? No. That means I have an angle between my two sides, so it is side, angle, side. Okay, so just because you have a right triangle does not mean it is hypotenuse leg. You can only use your given information. Okay, questions. Questions on these